Hey girl, Marissa here. You are listening to the Codependent Dummy podcast. As a young woman, you have been raised, reinforced, and rewarded for putting the needs of others above your own. Now, in your 20s, you're finding yourself exhausted, exasperated, and enveloped in shit relationships, especially the one you have with yourself. Codependency is a way of being where we put the feelings, wants, and needs of others above our own in an unconscious attempt to meet our own feelings, wants, and needs. Sorry to break it to you, sis, but that is not sustainable. This podcast is to help you undo all that so you can stop playing small and start taking up space, you dummy. Let's get to it.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Codependency podcast. Today, we are meeting and talking with Kelly Fabiano. Kelly is a life coach who supports moms in reconnecting with their mind, body, and purpose. She supports them in ending the tug-of-war between career, kids, and their identity outside of motherhood so that they live a life that lights them up inside. Kelly, thank you for coming on.
Thank you for having me.
Awesome. All right. So we'll start with the typical two. I'm curious, Kelly, how you conceptualize the term codependency.
So I don't know if this is the right answer, but I think of it as moving through your life with the opinions and perspective of others in the forefront.
Mm-hmm.
That's how I see it. Keeping others' opinions of you and what you're doing kind of in your pocket at all times.
Right. That resonates. Yeah, I don't know if it's about being right, but if it resonates. And yes, as a, healing codependent dummy, and I make a face because sometimes I'm more codependent and then more interdependent depending on the day.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, my definition or my conceptualization, I talk about the beginning. I say it's a way of being, right? Because it's just so pervasive. Mm-hmm. And so, yeah, I really appreciate your moving through your life, right? Because I think historically we've thought of codependency as a relationship dynamic that is only impacting, hopefully, fingers crossed, one relationship in our life. But it's like, no, you're like, it's moving through your life with the opinions and perspectives of others at the forefront. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I guess that's what it feels like to me as a, codependent human being, off and on. I like what you said about, I don't feel like we just get it and we're 100% healed and it never surfaces again. I think that codependency is something that we can fall back into. I feel like it's deeply ingrained in the way that a lot of us operate. And I think that it's great to be mindful of it. And I think you can definitely, work to not bring that into your life as much as possible. But yeah, I don't know that I'll ever arrive at never, ever having a single codependent relationship or moment or yeah.
Yeah. And I'm curious, you're hinting at it. Do you have any experiences of codependency from your own life that you can share with us?
Yeah, I mean, the first thing that kind of came up for me when well, during the very beginning of this podcast, I feel like and it's not really a person, it was the societal expectation, and also the expectation. Maybe I thought that my peers, I perceived that my peers, peer mothers, and
Mm.
also my mother, my mother-in-law, grandparents might have on their opinions on how I'm parenting, how I'm showing up as a mother. Am I falling short? And a lot of the decisions I made as a parent, they weren't centered in my own values and belief system. And there was a lack of trust. That's another thing that comes up for me when I think of a codependent relationship, the lack
Mm.
of trust in your own intuition. Uh, yeah, your own intuition. And so I was parenting from a place of always falling short because everyone did it better than I did. And I wasn't doing it the way that I should be doing it. I don't know if that qualifies as codependent, but that's what comes up for me. Okay.
Yes. Hello.
Okay.
Like, so your definition, right?
Mm-hmm.
Moving through life. So this example, moving through early motherhood with the opinions and perspectives of others at the forefront. And I do think that maybe there's an asterisk there, or a dot dot dot, and it's your experience tells me that with their opinions at the forefront and ongoing attempts to um, to please those opinions, right? To
Mm-hmm.
meet the expectations of their
Mm-hmm.
perspective. And
Yes.
so, yeah, I'm curious, like, specific examples that come to mind. Um, yeah, that come to mind that you can share.
I think that one of the biggest, I don't know, biggest examples, not the right word, but my partner and I are very much 50-50, if not him 60, me 40, when it
Mm.
comes to the separation of parenting responsibilities. And that is not the way that my mom raised us. And that is not the way that I'm sure my mom was raised, and on and on and on. Um, and it's not that necessarily that my mom ever directly said things to me. But it was, every diaper he changed, my husband, every meal that he made. So my husband's the cook in the family. You don't want me in the kitchen. I'll make healthy food, but it's not going to taste good.
Mm.
I like the way it tastes, but those things that are traditionally female roles that I was not fulfilling because it wasn't something that brought me joy. It wasn't something I was all that great at. And I was good at other things. I kind of brought a lot of masculine energy to, organizing our lives and, always knowing what size of clothing they were and, doing inventory of their clothes and toys and all of it, knowing all of the keeping milestones and all of that stuff. um but it felt like I wasn't doing what a mom should do. I felt like I was falling short every single day. I
Mm.
was also a working mom,
Mm.
and um I felt like I wasn't able to spend enough time with my children, enough time with my partner, enough time at work. It was just an exercise over and over of just not being enough, period.
Mm-hmm. Right. Um, any any specific comment from your mom, or like time where you like really sensed like my mom would want this, so I will? Yeah, I'm curious, like having her opinion at the forefront about that.
This is going to get me in trouble with my mom.
Mm.
but but I think it's that this is the comment, or this phrase is just so prevalent. That must be nice. That must be nice. I don't feel that I'm alone in that, where you have a parent or an authority figure, an elder say, oh, that must be nice. That's saying, that it's not really saying that must be nice. It's a way of conveying a different message, that, well, that's not how I did it. That must be really nice to, have a husband that does X, Y, and Z, because I didn't have that. And at first that really stung. And then I also, I am a huge believer in therapy, and a therapist had really put a different perspective on it as, okay, well, when someone's telling you that must be nice, instead of perceiving that as a dig and receiving it as a dig, maybe perceive it as as what they had not received, what experience they weren't able to have. It's something that they're expressing lack and disappointment. And so that's kind of helped, because my mom did everything.
Wow.
She did it all. And there were 3 of us. She stayed home with us. She cooked 3 meals a day, 2 snacks, did all of the activities, arts and crafts, all of that. And then when she had to work for financial reasons, she was still doing all of those things and working a full-time job, and changing all the diapers, and, so on and so on. She didn't have that partnership so much.
Right.
So now I know that it's just, that's coming from a place of, I wish I had that too.
Right.
Versus
Yeah.
you're a bad mom.
Right. And you said at first it stung, right? Because I think codependence, on good days, we just float around thinking what others are, right, their opinions and perspectives, but then hearing it, and it is, it is more negative, more critical. It's like, oh no, like I already worry you think this about me, and
right.
that dictates my behavior at times. Now it's confirmed. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. It definitely felt like that. It's like, this
Mhm.
is what I've thought you thought of me. And now you're confirming my worst fear to be true.
Right.
Yeah. It
Yeah.
doesn't feel good.
No. Yeah. So I'm hearing therapy, and especially in this role, and like during interactions with your mom, that has helped. And yet, early motherhood sounds like in general, you had a lot of opinions and perspectives at the forefront of your mind.
And I mean, some outright, not just unspoken, but spoken. And I don't think that we're prepared for that as mothers. And I don't think we're prepared for the complete loss of identity that often happens. So you come home from the hospital or birth center or whatever, and you no longer matter. You have given birth and you no longer matter. It's like you just entered into this world without consent. You didn't know this was going to happen. This wasn't what you agreed to, but it just happens. And to feel like you don't matter anymore, I felt like I was in a tornado. I didn't know up from down. I couldn't see past my own nose. So I was kind of clinging to the opinions of others, because it's like, okay, well, I don't matter anymore. I have this. My first son was very colicky. He screamed at the top of his lungs from around 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. And those were the hours I was home. And that my husband was working when I was on maternity leave. So I was literally holding a child that nothing I did soothed him. Talk about feeling like a failure. I couldn't fix it. And then you have these opinions and you have this loss of identity. You're disconnected from your body. You're exhausted. I just think that it's, yeah, your perspective is so all over the place. It cannot be trusted.
Right.
Yeah.
It's interesting. We talk about codependency. There's a lack of trust.
Mm-hmm.
And also not trusting your, tunneled, I don't know, like just full of blind spots view as a new mom. Just sounds like there's some way, or I don't know, a need to balance those two. It's like you do want to trust yourself, but also like your world is so small right now. Yeah, you might not be seeing things so clearly for the initial part of this adventure.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. Well, hearing about early motherhood, right? We are not prepared. You no longer matter. I am curious, what are some of the ways that you've witnessed moms like develop or like early motherhood, I guess, compound their codependency? Either, the healthy dependency with their baby, getting like they overfixate, or with their partners, or with these opinions of others. Your thoughts?
Well, I think it's twofold. I think one is, reconnecting with your body and your mind. I think the other is really getting clear on your values, and boundaries come into play there. Once you are really clear on your core values, I see it as gently tethering yourself back to you. So, it depends on where a mom is on their journey. I think, and it's also, I think, important to note that if there's any postpartum anxiety or postpartum depression, postpartum psychosis, which I have had all three of those with both sons, one or the other, or a combination of, I think the first thing to do is to get help. Seek help from a mental health professional, not from a coach, from a mental health professional, because there's a lot of healing that needs to happen. I think before you do any of the things that I work with my clients on. Outside of that, I like to encourage my clients to spend between 5 to 15 minutes taking on some element of self-care, which is such a buzzword, but it's just anything that makes you feel cared for, held, honored, meeting a desire, meeting a need. It's anything. It can be a drive with music blaring and the windows down, just getting out of the house. It can be a cup of coffee in silence. It can be meditating in the morning. It can be anything that they need, but really adding that 5 to 15 minutes into their daily life. Just a little glimpse of prioritizing them just a little bit. When it comes to core values, there's Brene Brown's core values exercise. I'm a huge fan of that. I think that getting really clear on what it is that matters to you, what your values are as a human being, that helps you to not take on values, opinions, perceptions that aren't yours to carry.
Right.
Um, there's a lot of little tools that I work through with clients. Something just coming up for me is I had a mom who she felt she wore makeup all the time before she had her son, and not wearing makeup made her feel gross. She didn't feel
Mm.
good about herself. And she just we decided that it would be a great exercise for her to start to put on makeup again, like just a little bit, whatever she has time for. And I'm not saying that we all need to wear makeup, but this made her feel beautiful, and it
Mm.
made her feel kind of alive again. And she also, being on social media is a huge part of how she ran her business. So she wasn't on social because she felt unattractive and
Mm.
undesirable and didn't want to put herself out there. So she started wearing makeup, being more present on social, which meant she was more engaged in her business, which is another piece of her and her agency. And it really just helped to build, that confidence and stand firmer in who she was as a person, because her business was a huge part of her identity.
Right.
Um, yeah. I don't know if that,
Mhm.
but that's what came up for me.
Okay. Yeah. And what are some of mm, the ways that you've seen codependency in the women you work with?
Mm, I feel like it comes up the most when it's asking your partner for what you need
Mm.
and not feeling like a bad mom for doing it. You know, um, it's that mom guilt that if I go for a walk by myself, I'm selfish.
Mm.
Or if I need to take a nap instead of folding laundry, instead of prepping baby food, instead of doing X, Y, and Z, then I'm lazy. Um, if I don't enjoy arts and crafts, and I just want to zone out for a minute and watch trashy reality television, I'm a bad mom. But I think it does come up most often, most powerfully, in that I need to ask my partner for permission to take care of myself.
Mm.
And that was my experience as well. And I have an incredibly supportive partner, but I felt like because I struggled more than he did with being a parent, it was harder for me, that transition. It felt harder. I was more exhausted. I wasn't a natural at that, like that maternal glowing energy that wasn't there with me. It was hard. I was scared of my son for the first few weeks that he was in our lives. I also had postpartum psychosis. um but I felt like such a burden, and I couldn't see past that.
Mm.
It was just, I couldn't see. I could not trust that what I was asking for I deserved. That was really present for me with the
Mhm.
birth of my first son. A little less so with my second, because I did receive mental health treatment. And now it's much easier to ask for what I need and also what I want.
Right. Yeah.
But it wasn't easy
No.
before. No.
Right. So I'm hearing that overall, with the women you work with and in your own experience, um, yeah, one of the biggest ways that you've observed codependency is in women, right? Moms having difficulty asking a partner for what they need.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And, you know, do you sense it's having his perspective like at the forefront, or is it having like other moms or society's perspective where we're not able to ask for help? Like, what do you sense is yeah, your thoughts on that?
Well, I don't want to speak for my clients, but I think for me personally, it wasn't that. I mean, I thought this might, maybe my husband does feel this way, that I'm lazy, that I'm X, Y, and Z. But it felt like more of a compounded experience. It wasn't just him. It was, every other woman out there that's doing it better than me on social media. And it was
Mm,
friends of mine who make mom life look easy.
right.
And it was just all of the things. It was all of it. It was almost like I had a million thought bubbles all around me of everything negative you can say about me as a mom. And I didn't dare ask for something that would like bring that shower of negative um perception and self-talk down on me. Like it was try to keep it at bay by just suffering.
Mm,
That's what you do. Um so that's my personal experience.
yeah. Can you say more about social media,
Mm,
other moms?
yeah. Ugh. I think comparison is it's like the Achilles heel for moms. And as if we didn't have enough and enough reasons to feel like we're falling short to, if you're a career mom and you're watching a stay-at-home mom on social just killing it, or you're watching another career mom who really seems to have that work-life balance, or you're watching someone who looks like they're on the ground playing with their kids and they look like they're just loving it, and it's just not your that's not what you love to do. You don't find that type of play to be fun. um you are always going to come up second or last. You're never going to be top if you are looking through the social media lens. You just will continually fall short. It's brutal out there.
Mm,
And I think it's important to note, and this is something that I say in my workshops and with clients, that even the moms who like keep it real on social media, you're only seeing what they mean for you to see. It's a very intentional lens. I myself, I don't I don't record myself 24/7. I On social media, I try to share the good and the bad, and the ugly and the overwhelming and all of that, but it's through an intentional lens. It just is. It's not to say that people are manipulative or that it's, meant with malintent, but it's intentional. It's an intentional
mhm,
lens. So it's not reality.
right.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's hard. Yeah. And yeah, I know like as a codependent, um, yeah, I'm not active on social media. I haven't been for a couple years for different reasons, but yeah, one of them being that it was so overwhelming at times. And yeah, I was like out in the world, and I know this is everyone's experience, but I wasn't present doing things. I was thinking like, oh, like what would the caption be? Or,
Mm-hmm.
like this is time for a picture.
Yep.
So then it even distorts actual real life. Like real life
Yes.
isn't real. So social media isn't real. And then my life isn't real. And yeah, I don't even have children. And I, as you're talking, I'm thinking of some of the moms. I don't know, I put quotes, but yeah, like my friends or family friends or distant friends who would become moms, and just looking at these cookie cutter photos and really having to remind myself, like, Marissa, it's not real. It looks real and it looks amazing and they look so happy. But Rachel Hollis got divorced. Right? Just like really having to remind myself, or else you can get lost. And I can't imagine, the times when I felt so poorly about myself, having a little baby, in my arms, and trying to recuperate from everything that pregnancy means to our bodies, to our minds, to our relationships, and trying to navigate those images peacefully. Yeah, like not worrying that I'm not measuring up. So yeah, really hard.
It's impossible to, I find it impossible to feel really good about yourself when on social media. I rarely leave social media feeling like the top dog. That's not been my experience. Yeah, it's something. I don't know. And everybody has opinions. So another thing that I find really, I find it to be, it feels emotionally unsafe for me, is to watch parenting influencers. So here's how to parent gently. Here's how to parent in an attached fashion. Here's how you should be doing it. Have you yelled at your kids? Well, that's wrong. Do this instead. To me, I know myself now well enough to know that I can't watch that stuff. And I don't do that as a coach. I am a coach for moms, but I don't coach them on how to be a mom. I coach them in reconnecting with themselves outside of motherhood, because I don't need to add my opinion to the plethora of opinions they've already had flooding their eyes, ears, all of it. I know when I start to see that on TikTok or Instagram, I need to scroll up or move over whatever direction that I need to go, because that's going to fuel my anxiety that I'm not doing it right. It's not a good, I just really wish that didn't exist. And I know that people are trying to help, and that, perhaps this is something that worked for them, and they know it can work for you. I just think that it can be very overwhelming for a mom to see that. So I don't like it.
No.
It's not my favorite.
Yeah. My sister, she just had, my nephew turned 1 yesterday. She is on TikTok. She's obsessed. Yeah. And she's definitely, she's like learned mom tips, which have been very helpful. She hasn't brought up any content that's really overwhelmed her. And at the same time, yeah, like she and my brother-in-law, like they have certain practices, and me being a licensed therapist, I'm like, like, and but I haven't had a child, so who am I? And also, I think I hesitate to say anything to them, because I know that they already have 1,001 opinions. I'm curious, like, how do you help not related to parenting, but how do you help the women you work with tune out all the noise from parenting experts, social media, in-laws, their parents?
Yeah, I mean, I think the biggest part of that for me is getting clear on who you are, what your values are as a human being and as a parent. So, one thing I take clients through is their mission statement. At the end of our series, I often have them create a mission statement. And this is a statement that says, this is how I want to show up for myself. This is how I want to show up for my career. This is how I want to show up for my kids, my partner. These are my non-negotiables. These are things that no matter what, these are priority. This will not change. This is how I feel. I'm going to honor these things no matter what. Things that they're flexible about, but I feel like getting really clear on how it is that you want to, not just the logistics, but how do you want to feel as a mom? How do you want to feel in your career? How do you want to feel as a whole human being? What matters the most to you in the ways that you show up and in the legacy you leave behind? All of that. When we put those values and that mission statement down on paper, it becomes a tangible, more solid feeling thing versus it floating out there. And, I think that it brings it to the center.
Right.
My journey with motherhood and mom guilt and career and my sexual identity, all of it. It's been a journey. It's been, I've been all over the place. And I now, in doing the work and getting centered on what matters to me and who I am as a human being and what I stand for and what I don't stand for and what my non-negotiables in life are, I can move through chaos. And I'm not saying my life is rainbows and butterflies, because it certainly isn't. Things get hard still. But I know who I am in the face of all of that. I stand firm in who I am. And that alone makes it much easier to meet those challenges and those situations, because I know what I want. I can plug into my intuition, my gut, and trust myself because I know myself.
Right.
Stepping down from my soapbox.
Yeah. I'm hearing that our values, right, as codependents, which, yeah, I think having a baby, I'm like, oh God. It could add gasoline, all that comes with it. Gasoline on a codependent fire with all the opinions. And I'm hearing that for you, for the women you work with, yeah, and I sense for me and a lot of the listeners, is one really strong way to combat that is like almost like a shield, which, yeah, it's called values. It just really can protect and thwart off. Like, I can go through social media with this shield, not necessarily letting any of that penetrate me, or just getting to a point where I'm like, I don't need to be here. Or, yeah, if people are opining, just tapping into my values can really help, again, like shield and protect me from buying into those opinions. So
yeah.
yeah.
I love that visualization. That is what for me, that's what it feels like, is bringing that shield with me. And I think when you reconnect to your body and what a yes and a no feels like for you, and and what anxiety feels like for you in your body. So I'll be on TikTok and I can feel, so for me, it's usually the spinning disc in my chest. That's what it feels like. Or popcorn in my head. Those are the two feelings that I get when anxiety starts to come on. So if I'm on TikTok and I'm feeling this, I know, oop, I'm not feeding that. That doesn't feel good. So next,
Right.
I'm going to keep myself safe from this. Yeah, but I love that shield analogy. I love that.
Yeah. And for yourself or for some of the women you've worked with who, I don't know, maybe they go through the first couple years or decades of new motherhood, not, able to, aware of their values. Kelly, what happens, right? In your bio, you said, helping women so they can live a life that lights them up inside. What does it look like when they come to you in the depths of darkness and just totally what is the word? Identified with social media, with what they think their partner wants them to be, with what their mother-in-laws and mothers want them to be, like, trying to please their kids. Like, yeah, what happens?
Do you mean like how are they showing up in the beginning? What's present for them, or
like what are the consequences if we don't do the work?
Oh my gosh. Well, my fear is that if we don't honor ourselves and reconnect with ourselves, we can very well end up empty nesters who have gone decades of their life without examining what it is that would make them happy and what it is that brings them joy and who they are outside of this single role.
Right.
I think it's so important that we actively take an interest in what lights us up and that we integrate that into our lives now, because being a mom should be an expansion of who you are. It's an added identity. It's not your only identity. It's not the only role. It's not all of who you are. It's an added piece, an added layer. So if you put everything, your whole life on hold for this one layer, that layer is going to become an independent, God willing, individual.
Right. So we crossed our fingers. How
Yes.
come? Because maybe they won't if we're over identified with the role.
Here, light bulb just went off. Talk about a recipe for codependency. I have sacrificed everything for you. You owe me your behavior. You owe me the personality I think you should have. You owe me big time, kid. Like, can you imagine how many of us have a parent and it doesn't have to be this malicious, in your face event, but how many of us have parents who that narrative is kind of hiding in there. It's behind some of the words that are spoken or actions that are taken. It's, I've given everything for you. You owe me. That's like, that's a recipe for codependency. So, and I didn't even think of that. So thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. No,
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, I think that, like you said, not malicious, not intentional. I think especially women's position in society still to this day, being the yeah, second class citizens. We're, we are still assumed the caregivers and caretakers of the home. And now we have to work, which is, of course, we want to work, but it's like we have to do both. And
100% too.
Right. So the division of labor hasn't actually been split, that, yeah, especially women have been put in a position where, yeah, I don't think my grandmothers were ever asked what they wanted to be when they grew up. They just were told, like, you're going to be such a good mom. And, thankfully, my mom and her generation, they started to get asked or encouraged to reflect on that question. But yeah, women still to this day, if and when they have children, sometimes put all their energy into that role and over identify, and then, yeah, once their children start to show independence, there might be unconsciously attempts to maintain dependency, which turns into codependency, because where's my value outside of this role? And you're saying, that's a really good question to ask, and let me help you find it. Yeah, as opposed to, let me just keep my kid dependent on me in different ways. Yeah.
And what you brought up about, I think it's also something I've heard in feedback and, doing some market research and reaching out to moms of all ages and stages, is that moms that have children that are grown adults, maybe they're even grandparents, they'll say to me often after a workshop, well, I wish I knew that you existed when I needed you. But they showed up to the workshop, right? And then the workshop is all about obtaining this work-life self-balance. So you attended the workshop because you were kind of seeking that, but you don't think you need it because your children are gone. And I think that you can be a mom who is, drowning in diapers, or you can be a mom with, great grandchildren, and still this work applies and can benefit you. I think we all need to reconnect with who we are, um, and honor that person.
Yeah. Honor that person. I'm curious, beyond the mission statement, getting in touch with our values, right? Writing it down. Any other suggestions or ways that you help the women you work with combat codependency?
Boundaries is a huge piece.
And
what
does boundaries look like? Yeah, with new moms when there aren't any, because your body literally doesn't, it belongs to you, it does, but also it has multiple uses for a certain amount of time.
And boundaries also, I found it's interesting, because I think that one place that would benefit a lot of mothers is to place healthy boundaries between themselves and their children, specifically their children's behaviors and their children's identity. I think I have a 7-year-old who is not formally diagnosed as neurodivergent, but I think, he's had behavior issues in school ever since he was a really, really young boy in daycare. And when the phone would ring, because it rang a lot, I would recoil, and I'm a bad mom. shame would just wash over me. And it took several years for me to really actively practice distancing my self-worth and my identity from my son's behaviors. I am not my son's behaviors. My son's behaviors do not reflect on who I am as a human being. They don't make me a bad mom. I'm a really good mom. I'm a great mom. I'm a loving mom. And my son did X, Y, and Z. So I can handle that from a calm and grounded perspective. But shame doesn't need to be a part of that because I have nothing to be ashamed of. I think that's one of the most powerful boundaries we can put into place. Also, detaching ourselves from our children's successes or setbacks. You know, they're what they are when they grow up, who they love, all of that. It's not, these are individuals, and we are there to support them to the very best of our ability and to give them as safe of a space as we can. But we are not, this is their journey, you know, and we cannot control that. And I don't know that, do we want to? I mean, I don't know. I don't know. Sometimes I would very much love to control my son's journey. But it's not mine. It's not mine. So that's a powerful set of boundaries I would recommend all moms kind of look into. And then just boundaries with family, with your partner, with your work. That's a big one. Knowing that it's, especially for women, delegation in the workplace feels like I might be passed up for a promotion, because now it's like, well, ever since she became a mom, she's not staying late anymore. She's not giving 150%. Well, she doesn't have 150%. You know, if she has like, it's not possible. It's not possible. So I think and there's a lot to work through there. And I don't think that I have the one size fits all answer, but it is something that we have to navigate for career moms that are working outside. Well, I would say outside of the home, but a lot of us are working remotely at home. But
boundaries are needed there too. Yeah.
Yes. Oh my gosh. Boundaries working from home. Woo, that's a whole other, going remote and having 2 children during a pandemic when schools are all virtual. Boundaries, we needed them to survive, to stay sane. It was, yeah, that was a big exercise in boundaries. So,
right. So I'm hearing like day-to-day boundaries with work, with partner, you know, boundaries with your kids, like space-wise or time-wise, and also these core boundaries between my worth and my child's actions, right? Boundaries between what I, being all knowing, think, and what my, who my child dates or, does. Just really, like you said, really trying to separate, differentiate those two. Because when they're all enmeshed, right, all stuck together, that can really lead to a dark, empty overall existence. Yeah. I, working with mostly young women, it's interesting because I sense at times, them walking around the world being codependent, codependent with their parents. They, maybe they've taken that over identification and ran with it in their young adulthood because they don't date people because they worry, or they pursue a certain career because they sense or yeah, their parents have said that's what they want. And it just, no one ultimately is content in that situation. So just the consequences of
Yeah.
right, that just over identification in those family roles.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I think the work that you do is invaluable. I mean, I wish that I had known you, and well,
Like all
you
the
might not have been.
moms, the grandmas that come see you. Yeah.
I think that it's I think that a huge part of how I really found myself in the middle of that tornado, it wasn't just motherhood. It was that I had fit myself into a box that I felt would make me safe with my parents, with my peers, at work. And I was suffocating in that box. And then
Mm.
I had a child, and it just became even more stifling. But I wish I had done the work in my 20s to really get clear on what it is that who I am and what I want out of life, and stand firm in that, and know that I deserve that, and know that
Mm.
this is my journey, that I am deserving of sovereignty and agency in my own life. Um, so I love what you do. I think that it is so incredibly needed. And I think that it can, I think that, I don't think that there's a fix all for this happening in motherhood, losing your identity. I was keenly aware that that was a possibility before I became a mom, and I found myself smack dab in the middle of it regardless. But when you build a solid foundation, it's a lot easier to tether back onto that, to really lean back into who you are,
Mm-hmm.
because you knew at some point, and that changes. I think we evolve over time. Our preferences, everything changes and evolves, but your core being, I feel like I still, so my core values are connection, courage, curiosity, and trust. Those values have been there ever since I was a little girl.
Mm.
Those haven't changed. Those are part of who I am deep, deep, deep inside.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah.
Mm-hmm. Well, thank you. I
Yeah,
appreciate the work you do too. Yeah.
I'm just grateful that you exist. And, I think that it's such important work. It's really
Mm-hmm.
important.
Yeah. Well, having witnessed my sister this past year with the baby, it has been a revolutionary experience. Like
Mm-hmm.
watching her and my nephew, and we read a lot of books together about, I said we, she like asked my family to like read books on motherhood, and we supported her. And I'm a reader, so then I started reading more about psychology and babies and mothers and infants, which a lot of psychology is based around, but still it was like through like a men's perspective. Like Freud,
Mm-hmm.
he's like studying like women and babies and like thinking about it, but not having had a child.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I started reading more about like feminist theory and like feminist perspectives on psychology. And yeah, just, I mean, psychology, yeah. I mean, we do recognize the long-term impact that mothers and, parental figures have on children. But yeah, I am leaning more into like, how can I really make the most impact long term? And it's like helping new moms. It's just like you said, like, oh, like I wish I'd done the work in my 20s. It would have helped in so many ways. I'm like, oh man, I wish I could like help a lot of new moms. Like it'll
Mm-hmm.
help in so many ways. So I do. I commend you for what you do, Kelly. You're very needed.
Thank
Um,
you.
I'm curious, you do have a free resource to share about. Can you tell us about that?
Oh yeah. So the thought cards, which I feel I don't think anyone knows what thought cards are. And I only know because I had received thought cards from my company at one point and I loved them. So they're basically just cards that contain prompts, exercises, reflections. There's 21 of them. And the idea is that you spend 21 consecutive days pulling a card. And these exercises, prompts, activities, etc., they all take less than 15 minutes of your day. So something from there's a couple, I think one meditation that I link in a card that you can practice if that calls to you. There's some grounding exercises, there's journal prompts, there's leaving on that drive with a cup of coffee or a beverage of your choice, not alcoholic, obviously, because you're in a vehicle. But so it's 21 of those that you can commit to that self-care 21 consecutive days in a row. And they're all things that I've found helpful in my own journey. And when I work with clients, I gift them to my clients as well to pull from if they're running out of ideas. Because part of what we do together is in our 3 months, I ask them to commit to 5 to 15 minutes every day for 3 months.
Wow.
So if they're running out of ideas, they could pull a card. So that's what those are. It's a long-winded
Awesome.
explanation.
No,
But
I
that's what they
appreciate
are.
it. Yeah, sounds amazing. So we'll put a link to that in
Awesome.
the show notes.
Mm-hmm.
And where can people find you?
So they can find me on my website, and that's www.lifeanddeathwithkelly.com. I'm also a death doula, so that's the death part of it. And on Instagram and sometimes on TikTok, they can find me at Kelly Lynn Life Coaching is my handle. And I encourage people to feel free to DM me or email me anytime. I'm here to support.
Awesome. Okay, I'll put links to all of that, and we'll have to have you back to talk about your death doula role.
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
There's
And
definitely codependency amuck in end of
yes.
life. It
Yeah.
is all over the place.
Oh, beginning to end and the middle. It's everywhere. So yeah, I
Yeah.
really appreciate you coming on.
Thank you for
And
having me.
thank you. Okay, everyone. We'll see you next week. Bye.
Codependummy.com. Check out codependummy.com for more information on the show. And baby girl, a subscribe, rating, and review would be much appreciated. Till next time, I want you to remember, if you are feeling unseen, I see you. If you are feeling unheard, I hear you. And if you think that you don't matter, know that you matter to me. I want you to go out there so you can stop playing small and start taking up space, you dummy. And now, the disclaimer. Girl, this is not therapy and I am not your therapist. This podcast is designed to provide accurate and authoritative information in regards to the subject matter covered. It is given with the understanding that neither the host, publisher, or guests are rendering any legal, clinical, or other professional service. If you want or need a professional, please